Hello, I'm Craig Dale, the Head of Policy and Research at Commonweal. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss the circular economy, how our idea of a circular economy differs from the Scottish Government's, and in particular, how tool libraries and other resource libraries play a vital role in reducing resource use while providing better services than the current linear consumer system. This presentation draws heavily from Commonweal's Common Home Plan, the world's first comprehensive, fully budgeted, national-scale Green New Deal plan. It covers much more than just the circular economy, so I encourage folk to check it out via the links in the description. The current economy is a linear one, based on maximised and ever-growing consumption of resources. Resources are extracted, enter the economy, are turned into products, are consumed, and then disposed of. A study by Zero Waste Scotland found that of the 170 million tonnes of resources that entered the Scottish economy in 2018, less than 4%, just 6 million tonnes, were recycled. The Scottish Government has a target of increasing the recycling rates of household waste, a definition that omits much of the materials in the economy, up to 60% from current levels of about 45%. But on the 3rd of June 2024, they quietly scrapped that target. At the time of recording, no replacement plan has been published. In any event, the circular economy is about far more than recycling. In a true circular economy, we'd be looking not to maximise the amount of material recycled, while changing nothing else about the economy, but to minimise the amount that we have to recycle because we've changed everything else. When we designed the circular economy section of our Common Home Plan, we realised that it's not just one circle. It's not just recycle waste into resources. The circular economy is, in fact, a nested loop of multiple circles. And we should think about what happens to a resource when it first enters the cycle. In an ideal circular economy, every resource should spend as long as possible circulating around one of the higher circles, and only when it can't do that anymore should it descend to the next lower circle to repeat that loop for as long as it can, and then drop to the next one before finally being sent back to the very top to start again. To explain this, we'll now go through each one of those loops in turn. First principle, design to last. Products should be designed from the ground up for a circular economy, rather than us trying to design our recycling methods to cope with whatever products are pushed on us. Many of the products around us are designed to maximise profit. They are made flimsy, they're designed to become obsolete, they're hard or impossible to repair or upgrade. They might even be designed to be used only once. And they may be sold to us in a way that encourages us to buy far more than we actually need. After this presentation, I want you to look at the products around you, the things that you own, and consider how they could have been redesigned for a circular economy. Could they use fewer materials, including their packaging? Could the materials they use be substituted for one that is less linear and more circular? Could the product be designed to be repaired or reused? Could a material that can only be sourced using polluting processes or from far away be substituted for one that can be made locally into high environmental standards? Nothing should enter the Scottish economy unless it conforms to circular economy standards. We already mandate regulations like this when it comes to electronics or environmental safety, so this is really no different, just stricter and more comprehensive. The first circle. Borrow, don't buy. Look at something you bought. Did you need to buy it? Could things be designed so that you don't need to buy it? A classic example of this is a power drill. I don't have a lot of money, so if I needed to drill something, I might need to buy a cheap power drill. Once I've used it, it'll sit in a drawer for weeks or months not being used till I need it again. What if, instead of that, I could walk to my local tool library and borrow one of the best power drills currently being manufactured? And tomorrow, when I don't need it, you could borrow it, and then someone else could. That one power drill could be shared by many people. It could be used a lot more often than the cheap one I bought. And then we save a lot of money and resources by sharing rather than us buying the same thing. And we get to use better tools. This is the crucial thing about the circular economy. The green transition is often spoken about in terms of what we need to sacrifice to make it work. If we make it work, We get to use better products, and we don't need to pay as much for them to do so. And we don't waste resources to make it happen. The same goes for other aspects of the Green New Deal. With proper home insulation, I'd be forced to sacrifice up to 90% of my heating bill. Wouldn't that be terrible? Tool libraries are a growing trend in Scotland, but it shouldn't just be about tools. Book libraries, of course, but how about clothes libraries? Babies outgrow their baby clothes so quickly it makes sense to borrow rather than buy. And we could borrow clothes for special occasions. When I give this talk to an English audience, the idea of a guy borrowing a suit to go to a wedding sounds a bit strange, but for Scots this is already normal. There aren't many guys in Scotland who haven't borrowed or rented a kilt for a wedding. Why not extend that to other people and to other occasions? Need hiking gear to go and explore the Highlands? Borrow it from your local clothes library. Want a new board game for a family party? Borrow one. Want to learn a musical instrument on a whim? Go for it. We can even get the community involved. Imagine the Scottish Clothes Library Network having a fashion festival where they invite Scotland's new designers to submit their creations. The public then get to vote on them, and we all get to stoat about in the new season in designer clothes we didn't have to buy. Circle 2. Reuse. This is linked to the idea of borrowing. Many more uses out of each product, but it applies more to things that you wouldn't necessarily want to share with someone else. We're already getting quite good at this in some respects. Coffee cups are a good example, as are reusable shopping bags, although we'll see in a later loop why they can be a problem too. There have been backward steps though. Disposable vapes are about the very antithesis of the circular economy. These devices, often made intentionally addictive and sold via predatory marketing, are about as technologically complex, albeit somewhat smaller, than a mobile phone. Imagine you had to throw your smartphone in the bin after 10 phone calls. That wouldn't be acceptable. These vapes shouldn't be either, and I say that without comment on the health issues around the act of vaping itself. That the Scottish and UK governments are acting to ban them is welcome, but also a sign that they're not thinking circular economy yet. They are trying to ban a single product, as they did with disposable wet wipes and plastic straws and things like that. If the next new non-circular product comes along, like, for example, that hypothetical disposable phone, then they would want to ban that individually as well. A true circular economy bill would ban all products that don't meet the circular standards. The disposable vape wouldn't need to be banned. It simply would never have been allowed in the first place. We do, of course, need to be careful with reuse policies. If a product like a reusable bag is designed to last 10 times longer than a disposable one, but it costs 100 times as much resources to make, then we are wasting rather than saving resources. Things like the poorly designed and politically undercut Scottish deposit return scheme was fatally flawed because, unlike similar schemes in Europe, it didn't mandate standardised packaging, and so was forced to recycle rather than reuse things like glass bottles. The proposed UK scheme does neither, and is even worse, and has been delayed again, so there's that. But still, getting things like this right is a major part of the circular economy, and I'm disappointed that both governments haven't been able to do this yet. Circle 3. Repair. Too many goods these days are essentially sealed black boxes with no user-serviceable components in them. Many of them can't even be serviced by skilled third parties. Sometimes this is because components are glued together in a way that breaks them when you try to get access. Sometimes it's because the company wraps their products in legal issues for anyone who dares try to treat their possession as theirs, rather than as a time-limited leased gift from the company that they had to pay for. We need strong and strict producer responsibility. Producers should be liable for the waste their goods create from manufacture to final end of life. And all goods should come with a right to repair, designed so that even after the manufacturer ends official support or their own in-house repair service, users can continue to service their product for as long as they need to. Intentional designed obsolescence should simply be illegal. Circle 4. Remanufacture. Let's say that you've repaired and upgraded your phone to the point that it's a bit like the ship of Theseus and there aren't many original components left in it anymore. But then something critical goes completely gubbed and it's not practical to repair it. And anyway, technological advances mean that this kind of phone is no longer useful. Just because it's not a useful phone anymore doesn't mean that it can't be a useful something else. Maybe the chip can usefully control something with lower demands, like a 3D printer. The screen could be combined with other old screens to create a mosaic monitor for an art project, perhaps. The screws that held the case together could hold up a picture frame. The case could fit the guts of a new phone for someone who likes the quote-unquote vintage look but wants a modern device. Remanufacture means that after a product is no longer repairable, its components can still be salvaged and used elsewhere without much processing. Again, product design and component standardization will help make this easier. But a few lessons down at your local tool library could help give you the skills and ingenuity to come up with interesting solutions for your old components. Circle 5. Compost. Remember the reusable plastic bags I mentioned? One of the downsides of them is that they are often made thicker and with less recyclable plastic than the disposable ones they replaced. Just as the disposable bag bans and charges came in, companies had been transitioning to disposable but compostable bags. You can see bags like this more often now as caddy liners for your food waste, although some supermarkets still use them as their disposable bag option. We need to design out most of the plastic we currently use, but some of it could be retained. It's a very useful product after all. But it has to be transitioned to things like biopolymers, like those bags, or like the PLA polymers that are sometimes used in 3D printing. Although with little regulation in that sector at the moment, PLA is not nearly as biodegradable as it is advertised, particularly as no one knows what additives have been put into it. Again, producer responsibility is key here. In my own life, the bin I come close to overfilling before collection day is my grey recycling bin. So much plastic waste, even as I do my best to minimise it. Sometimes it's just not a choice I'm able to make, as the choices on offer are both wrapped in plastic. In fact, funny story, in my local shop I once spotted a choice between two types of semi-disposable scrubbing sponges for the kitchen. One of them was a conventional plastic sponge advertised as now with cardboard packaging. The other one advertised itself as now recyclable and was wrapped in non-recyclable plastic packaging. So close. Imagine we decided to do something to encourage producer responsibility in this. Imagine we all decided to take all of the packaging waste we gather after unpacking our shopping, take out all of the compostable packaging, and post the rest to the CEO's office of the company that produced it. Watch how quickly they redesign their products then. Circle 6. Recycling. Remember way back at the start when I mentioned the Scottish Government's decision to define a circular economy as maximise recycling? Look how far we've come in a true circular economy before we reach that point here. Only here, after the goods can't be reused or repaired, or after the components can't be used in something else, after the remaining materials can't be composted, only now do we think about recycling them. And even here, we have to think about circular design. Some materials, like metals and glass, recycle very well. The final product is just as useful as the virgin version. In fact, recycling things like aluminium can be cheaper and less energy intensive than creating new aluminium. So it really makes sense to use that material if it can displace something else where the opposite is true. However, many plastics don't recycle well, and only do so if they're not mixed with other types of plastic, and separating them, once mixed, is nearly impossible. Question: do you know how to keep PETE separate from PLA and HDPE? Can you tell me, without looking it up, which numbers those plastics are marked with under the ASTM resin identification coding system? That's the number in the middle of the recycling symbol in the product. I can't. No reasonable consumer can. Producers need to take more responsibility here too. The truth is that most plastic quote-unquote recycling involves downcycling to lower grade products at best, and diversion to another country for incineration or simply being fly-tipped in their countryside at worst. Even when you personally do the right thing, you separate all of your rubbish, you put everything in the right bin, you put your bins out, you try to shop better. Even when you do the right thing, the system fails you and fails the planet. This is why a true circular economy is much more important than just meeting a recycling target. But if we do it right, we get to this stage with the minimal need for recycling. Everything's already still stuck up at the other loops, moving round and round. We might even be able to go beyond net zero, which is essentially a promise to stop damaging the planet with our waste, without trying to fix anything more than that. We could move to a true Green New Deal that allows us to go back through our old landfills and tackle our legacies of past waste too. Think about everything you own. Think about what you could do, or make, or fix, if you had the tools to do it. Think about what you could learn if someone was there to teach and guide you. As a result of the 2021 Scottish Climate Assembly, the Scottish Government committed to bringing the number of resource libraries up from about 25 to 100. Great, but it's not enough. Something the minister at this time actually admitted to my face, saying that they hoped that the private sector would fill the rest of the gap. Hint, they won't, or they would have done it already. Having a tool library a 60-minute drive away when you can have Amazon send you a cheap plastic thing by tomorrow is not going to disrupt us away from cheap plastic consumerism. Resource libraries need to be at the heart of our communities. They need to be as ubiquitous as book libraries used to be. And most importantly, they need to be funded. The Scottish Government's commitment to create 75 new tool libraries didn't assign a single penny of resources towards creating or running any of those resource libraries. That's not good enough. And the Scottish Government has in 2024 moved backwards from that point. They've dropped their climate targets. They've dropped their recycling targets. They need to take on a new approach. Maybe they can borrow a new policy from someone. Commonweal published our Common Home Plan in 2019. It covers the circular economy, but so much more as well. Please visit the links in the description to get your copy, and then start demanding a future that works for all of us. And finally, Commonweal as an organisation is entirely funded by our donors and supporters who give us an average of about £10 a month. We don't get government money, the private sector certainly doesn't fill that resource gap for us, and we don't even have adverts on our website. In fact, if you're watching this on YouTube, our YouTube channel isn't monetized either, so any adverts you happen to see before watching this don't send any revenue to us. So please visit our website, donate to us if you can, and borrow as many of our ideas, policies and articles as you like. Thank you.